So the float that we're in now is the Equalux Shiraz. This is an angle load for warm bloods. The main benefit of an angle load, particularly for horses that don't like travelling in straight load, is if they scramble, they've got plenty of room to spread their legs their front legs without hitting the wall. But when you're choosing between a straight load and an angle load, it's important to ask the question why your horse doesn't travel. An angle load is not a cure-all. So if you've got a horse that doesn't travel well in a straight load, don't think that an angle load is necessarily going to solve your problems. One of the great features with an angle load is the amount of storage. So you've got these front cupboards, front tack box, overhead rug rack, and at the rear of the float, a swing out tack box. So for the humans, angle load offers a huge amount of storage. With larger horses in an angle load, this does add to the overall length of the float. So this particular float has 2.8 metre bays. This would be ideal for really big horses. The overall length of the float, however, is 16 foot long. So it is quite it's a bit over 5 metres. So it is quite a big float. So that's a consideration that you need, particularly with bigger horses. We have models in our range that suit, from ponies upwards, the float's only around 10 foot long, right up to this particular model. This particular float has right-facing bays. Right-facing bays I would always recommend. This allows the horse to be facing up the camber of the road. So angle load is an American concept, and obviously when this concept was brought out to Australia, most of the floats produced in the early days were left-facing. So this wasn't really taking into consideration that we drive on the opposite side of the road. So in the States, yes, they're left-facing, but the horses are also being driven on the opposite side of the road. So ideally, for long transport, you want the horse's weight fairly neutral over the axles, rather than, if you do follow a float next time, look at the way the float pitches to the left. And if you can imagine that the horse on a long trip has constantly got all his weight on that offside foreleg. One of the other benefits of a right-facing bay is it allows your personnel access door to be on the left. So if you are in an accident or you've got an emergency with the horse and you need to access the float on the side of the road, a right-facing bay allows you to do that safely away from the traffic, whereas a left-facing bay float would have that access door on the right side of the road. So potentially, you might be a traffic hazard, but ultimately, whether you choose to go left or right facing is entirely up to you. From my own personal experience, having had an accident with a horse on the side of the road, a right facing bay was ideal because we had multiple people accessing the float on a single lane 100k highway on the left side of the float. So I think if we had been accessing the float on the right side, we would have been a traffic hazard because of course nobody slows down. So if you're still a little bit unsure as to whether an angle load float or a straight load float is going to be best for you and your horses, give us a call on 1300 335 628 and we can have a chat about them and help you make the best decision for them.